Hi friends, today we have to discuss a very familiar topic and actually we all are experiencing in our day to day life, that is stress. The Indian society is undergoing a rapid transformation. Every individual in his lifetime wants to satisfy the needs of life, and if he fails to achieve his desired goals, he becomes frustrated and disappointed. Gradually, these feelings becomes intense and take the form of worry that lead to anxiety, depression and stress. It has by now become common experiences by almost all individuals. Stress is a pervasive failure of contemporary life. The reasons for the escalation of stress can be attributed to the globalization of capital and communications too. The rapid growth and development of information technology and other technological developments have changed the lives of people very much. The modes of economic production too has changed. Various forms of economic crisis too has occurred, increasing moral and scientific uncertainty too as some of the major outcomes. All these have led to stress becoming a natural part of the lives of every human being. It is now an inseparable aspect of human living and as a rule is experienced by almost all, maybe sometimes more and sometimes less. Since the dawn of human consciousness, mankind has been engaged in the pursuit of happiness, peace and free life. But on a deeper speculation, it has been found that the complexities and competitions for survival are increased day by day. This results in increased stress level. The most affected ones are the youngsters and professionals. In fact, life would be simple if our needs are automatically satisfied. At present, no one is fully satisfied with the happenings in the society and institutions. Consequently, the intensity and frequency of stress are increased manifold. Stress has been recognized as a most contributing factor to mental and physical health, job satisfaction and the ability to perform well in any settings. Sometimes it is the demands placed upon the individual that tax his resources and contributes to his stress. Stress is a negative emotion and psychological process that occurs as the individuals tries to adjust to or deal with environmental circumstances that disrupt or threaten to disrupt their daily functioning. Small amount of stress may be desired, beneficial and even healthy. Positive stress helps improve athletic performance. It also plays as a factor in motivation, adaptation and reaction to the environment. Excessive amounts of stress may harm the body. Stress can be external and related to the environment but may also be created by internal perceptions that cause an individual to experience anxiety and other negative emotions surrounding a situation, which they then deem as stressful. Humans experience stress or perceive things as threatening when they do not believe that the resources for coping with obstacles are enough for what the circumstances demand. When we think the demands being placed upon us exceed our ability to cope, we then perceive stress. Now, I am going to present the types of stress. There are three kinds of stress: eustress, new stress and distress. First one, eustress. Eustress is a healthy, positive, constructive result of stressful events and stress response and is considered as the result of the body's response to a stressor. It is a good stress and arises in any situation or circumstances that a person finds motivating or inspiring. For example, being promoted or winning a new job gives a person a bit of stress in the sense that they will have to adjust to new working conditions as well as create new relationships with new co-workers together with job performance expectations. Usually, situations that are classified as eustress are enjoyable and for this reason are not considered to be a threat. Eustress could be triggered by positive forms of social engagement, resourcefulness, and communal support. Moreover, the release of the oxytocin hormone during eustress response could push people to seek or provide aid. Second one is neustress. Neustress describes sensory stimuli that have no consequential effect. It is considered neither good nor bad. The word neustress comes from the prefix neu, meaning neutral, and is basically a type of stress that lies in the neutral reaction zone. News of an earthquake in a remote corner of the world might fall into this category. Although the events as such are stressful, its impact on an individual far away from that area tends to be neutral. The third one is distress. Distress is normally abbreviated as stress. This type of stress causes ill effects to a person and is what people usually refer to when talking about stress. If someone is talking about stress, it is almost always concerned with negative distress. This causes despair, grief, and sadness, or more simply, it disturbs the equilibrium of the body. Distress can be further divided into acute stress and chronic stress. Acute stress can be exciting and keeps us active and alert. On the surface, it is quite intense and disappears quickly. Chronic stress can have detrimental effects on health and it seems to linger for prolonged periods of time. Now, are you anxious to know about the factors that behind our stress? So, we pass on to the type of stressors. A stressor is an event, experience, or environmental stimulus that causes stress in an individual. These events or experiences are perceived as threats or challenges to the individual and can be either physical or psychological. Generally, we can classify different types of stressors into 4 categories. First one, crisis or catastrophes. Second one, major life events. Third one, daily hazards or micro stressors. Fourth one, ambient stressors. I am going to explain each stressor. First one, crisis or catastrophes. This type of stressor is unforeseen and unpredictable and as such is completely out of the control of the individual. An example of this is devastating natural disasters such as major floods or earthquake, wars, etc. Though rare in occurrence, this type of stressor typically causes a great deal of stress in a person's life. Second one, major life events. Major life events like birth, death, marriage can be either positive or negative, and these events are somewhat rare to be major causes of stress due to its rare occurrences. The length of time since the occurrence and whether or not it is a positive or negative event are factors influencing whether or not it causes stress and how much stress it causes. The events that have occurred in some distant past are not linked to stress or illness, while chronic events that occurred more than several months ago are linked to stress and illness and personality change. Third one, daily hazards or micro stressors. This category includes daily annoyances and minor hazards like making decisions, meeting deadlines at work, traffic jam, encounters with irritating personalities, etc. Often this type of stressor includes conflicts with other people. Daily stressors, however, are different for each individual, as not everyone perceives a certain event as stressful. Fourth one, ambient stressors. These are global low-grade stressors that are part of the background environment. They are defined as stressors that are chronic, negatively valued, non-urgent, physically perceptible and interactable to the efforts of individuals to change them. Examples of ambient stressors are pollution, noise, crowding and traffic. Ambient stressors can have a negative impact stress without conscious awareness. And now we will go to the different source of stress. It would be useful for you when you recognize the sources. There are 4 principal sources of stress. First one, environmental. It includes physical stressors that impinge upon the 5 senses such as weather, traffic, noise, pollution, disturbing images. Second one, social. It includes psychological stressors triggered when demands are made on our time, attention and skills such as job interviews, public speaking, work presentations, interpersonal conflict, competing priorities, financial problems and loss of relationships and loved ones. Third one, physiological. It includes physical stressors that are produced at various stages in our life such as during growth spurts in adolescence, menopause, lack of exercise, poor nutrition, insufficient sleep, illness and aging. This includes the physical stress produced by psychological stressors which produces muscle tension, headache, stomach upset, anxiety attacks and bouts of depression. Fourth one, cognitive emotional. The principal source of this type of stress is our own thoughts. Our brain interprets changes in our environment and body and conducts an automatic threat assessment to decide whether a danger is present and thus mobilize the body's defenses. The good functioning or poor functioning of our threat assessment mechanism determines whether we become alarmed appropriately or inappropriately and whether to remain stressed or relax. Are you interested in learning how to cope up with stress? Let us move on to the main part of this topic, that is coping with stress. Stress does not make people sick but may make them give up their inner adaptability to cope with the situations. The greatest threat to life and health is having nothing to live for. Life becomes meaningful when one have commitments to complete and ambitions to realize. If stress is not managed in time, it will lead to fatal consequences such as hypertension, ulceration, impotence, diabetics, etc. If we do not learn to cope up with stress, our immune system would decline and signs of hypertension, neurosis, apathy, depression, etc. would result. Feeling that something terrible is going to happen without knowing when it would happen can be a great source of stress. Anyone who is worried about fear of criticism, fear of sickness or death, fear of failure, etc. are in situations that cause stress. If prolonged, it would make the release of hormones containing chemicals into our bloodstream. We need to take measures to ensure that the body is cut off from this process before harm is done. The popular starting point of the coping research is the conceptual engagement by Lazarus in 1966 on coping and stress. Lazarus argued that stress consists of 3 processes. Primary appraisal is the process of perceiving a threat to oneself. Secondary appraisal is the process of bringing to mind a potential response to the threat. Coping is the process of executing that response. Although these processes are most easily described as a linear sequence, Lazarus has emphasized that they do not occur in an unbroken stream. Rather, an outcome of one process may revoke a preceding process. For instance, realizing that an adequate coping response is readily available may cause you to reappraise a threat as less threatening. As another example, if coping response is less effective than expected, you may reappraise the level of threat or reappraise what coping response is appropriate. The entire set of process they may cycle repeatedly in a stressful transaction. Stress coping strategies refer to the thoughts and acts used by individuals to manage the internal or external demands or both, or tax or exceed their psychological resources. Like stress response, strategies for coping with stress can be cognitive, emotional, behavioral and physical. Cognitive coping strategies. It replaces catastrophic thinking with thoughts in which stressors are viewed as challenges rather than threats. Cognitive coping does not eliminate stressors, but it can help people perceive them as less threatening and thus make them less disruptive. Emotional coping strategies. Seeking and obtaining social support from others are effective. The perception that one has emotional support and is cared for and valued by others tends to be an effective buffer against the ill effects of many stressors. With emotional support comes feedback from others along with advice on how to approach stressors. Behavioral coping strategies. It involves changing behavior in ways that minimize the impact of stressors. A time management plan can help control catastrophizing thoughts by providing reassurance that there is enough time for everything and a plan for handling it all. Behavioral, emotional and cognitive skills often interact closely. Discussing stressors and seeking feedback from others help to think more rationally and calmly and make it easier to develop and use sensible plans for behavioral coping. When behavioral coping eliminates or minimizes stressors, people find it easier to think and feel better about themselves. Physical coping strategies. These are aimed at directly altering one's physical responses before, during or after stresses occur. The most common physical coping strategy is some form of drug usage. Prescription medicines are sometimes an appropriate coping aid, especially when stressors are severe and acute. But if people depend upon other drugs without proper medical prescriptions, they negatively affect the ability to apply coping strategies. If the drug is abused, it can become a stress itself. The resulting loss of perceived control over stressors may make those stressors even more threatening and disruptive. Now, I am going to present the effective ways of coping with stress. Stress is something that everyone has to face irrespective of the personal, academical and personal differences. Coping strategy is a conscious effort to solve a personal or interpersonal problems that will help in overcoming, minimizing or tolerate stress or conflict. But the ability to cope with it varies from person to person. Some have very high stress coping skills and some have very little. We need ways to calm our mind and body after stress. Some of the effective ways of coping with stress are change the way of thinking. Anything would be seen from different perspectives. The way we feel almost always results from the way we think. One should avoid getting preoccupied with negative thoughts such as being powerless, always meeting objections and failure, etc. Instead of these, one should focus on his or her strength and past victories. Negative thoughts produce needless wear and tear on our mental motor. Confident, successful people deposit all positive thoughts in their memory. Second one, get organized. To be perpetually disorganized, be it at work or in the home, is a common source of stress. Many have the habit of postponing their duties if it is possible. When the pending cases grows into becoming a formidable task, they begin to view them with an air of torpidity and fear. Tension and stress begin to build up. Such stressful situations can be avoided or at least minimized when we begin to recognize ourselves and to start to do things in a systematic manner. Being better organized leads to work efficiently and wasting very less time. Next one, ventilation. As the pressure keeps growing, the boiler would burst if it does not find an outlet. This is what happens in the case of people who keep things to themselves. Such people carry a considerable but unnecessary burden. Talking to a person with others can be the first step to eliminating it whenever we find ourselves in a stressful situation. Conversing with a trusted individual and writing can be another means through which the stressful situation can be minimized. Next one, develop in a good sense of humor. Humor is found to be wonderful stress reducer and an antidote to getting upset. Laughter can release muscle tension, improve breathing and regulate the heartbeat. Humor is a great release of tension and one approved by society. Available to anyone, anytime, anywhere, it is free too. If we learn to laugh honestly at ourselves, half our battle with stress is won. Next one, change the lifestyle. A well-balanced diet not only helps in preserving health, but it also reduces stress. Certain food items and drinks act as stimulants in the body. Drinks such as coffee, tea, cola and alcohol may bring solace for some time, but they are harmful in the long run. So have a balanced diet and develop healthy habits which will ward people of being easy victims of stress. The next one is regular exercise. Exercise can play an important role in the dissipation of excess energy caused by stress reaction. Regular exercise can drain off the stress and keep things under control. Chemicals like endorphins produced in the brain during exercise can promote a sense of positivity and happiness. Endorphins have anti-aging effects also. Next one, striking a balance between work and leisure. There are periods of peaks of energy and concentration interspersed with periods of low energy and inefficiency. There is no meaning in working in such periods of low energy. If we take breaks during such periods of low energy, stress may build up. Sleep and leisure are important ways of reducing stress. Optimizing the balance between work and leisure is an important means of eliminating unwanted stress in our lives. Next one, learning to deal with conflicts. No one is free from conflicts. When we are under conflict, we have several alternatives to cope with it. They are compromise by negotiations in which everybody wins. Withdraw and walk away from the conflicting situation. Engage in creative search for a solution. Seek the assistance of others for solving the problem. Refusing to get involved by being indifferent and finding ways to get around the unpleasant situation. Next one, learning to cope with change. In our lives, we may have to confront many challenging situations. A change in job, residence or such significant changes in any areas of our life are examples. But when we are ready to face all these problems, we will be able to cope with this stress. Next one, learning to handle criticism gracefully. Facing criticism is an unavoidable thing in life, especially if someone is leading a life with some social activities and involvement. But most people handle criticisms in an unproductive or rather in a counterproductive manner. They try to avoid it either by neglecting them or by changing the subject. When we are faced with criticism, there are some ways to manage them positively. They are ask for details, find which specific behavior of yours is in question. If criticism is correct, agree with it. If criticism is incorrect, agree with the person's right to see it differently. The next one is professional help. There are some situations beyond our control where we have to seek out the assistance of professional help. Nowadays, there are various alternative therapies and medicines available which provide excellent relief for stress and stress related problems. The last one, counseling and psychotherapy. Apart from other measures, counseling and psychotherapy too can be considered as techniques for reducing the intensity of stress. Let me conclude. Stress is a state of tension produced by pressure or conflicting demands with which the person cannot adequately cope. It is a reality of our times and everyone faces stress in one situation or other in life. The word coping has been used mainly with two meaning, ways of dealing with stress and the effort to master harmful conditions, threat or challenge. Coping strategies can be effective or ineffective. Besides these, there are professional services available to deal with stress. So, proper care must be taken to avoid stress and through that we can avoid many of the distress that often accompany it. I am going to sum up today's topic, coping with stress. All faces stress at some times in life. It refers to the force exerted on a system that deforms, destroys or alters the structure of the system. Coping strategy is the process of managing demands that are appraised as taxing or exceeding the individual resources. The central function of coping is the reduction of tension and the restoration of equilibrium. We have to distinguish between coping that is directed at managing or altering the problem causing the distress, that is problem focused, and coping that is directed at regulating emotional response to the problem, that is emotion focused. There are psychological changes that occur when you face perceived threats in certain situations. These situations are known as stressors. When your stress response is triggered, a series of changes occurs within our body, and these changes can include an increased pulse, the release of adrenaline, reduction of blood toward major organs, and the release of hormones. We need ways to calm our body and mind after stress or have taken its toll. Coping strategies are efforts on the part of the individual to deal with taxing situations. Thank you for watching this session. Have a nice time.